Hello and welcome to the latest edition of The Hex with Daniel Robertson, John Arnold, Armand Kafai. Again, guys, please give us a like, a comment, hit the thumbs up. We're getting more viewers and we're not getting enough thumbs up. It helps us grow the show quite a bit. So go ahead and give us a comment. Let us know what you think. Give us a thumbs up and we will get started with the 6 hottest topics in North American soccer. Let's do it. For the second time in 3 months, officially, there has been a shakeup at Inter Miami in the football operations department. Raul Sanllehi, he's out. He got kicked to the Coral Gables office. I don't think we're going to be hearing from him again. In Guillermo Hoyos, who is a close friend of Messi. He was the club's academy director of methodology. Previous sporting director, Chris Henderson, he's in Atlanta. His right-hand man, Mark Prezant, is the assistant GM in San Diego. John, what is going on with Inter Miami?
I'll tell you what's going on with Inter Miami, and I'll tell you why. I've seen people say, oh, well, this reflects poorly on Messi, or, oh, Miami, are they in chaos? I'll tell you what's going on. This is Lionel Messi's club, and it should be. I think Chris Henderson's a good soccer guy. I think all the other people you named, I'm sure they have their talents as well. I don't know them as well. But you brought Lionel Messi for this. They won the Supporters' Shield last year. They sell tons of jerseys. They're the most marketable club in the world, maybe, and they're good on the field. So if Lionel Messi says, you know what, I don't like this guy, the way he's running things, and I want this guy in there, I think you bet on the future, and yeah, you're going to have to figure out what to do you bet on the present, and you're going to have to figure out what to do in the future. But like, if the present's beautiful and you win trophies, Inter Miami, what history do they have to sort of like, no, this is it. This is who Inter Miami is. It's Messi's club. These are Messi's guys. And that's what this club signed up for eagerly. And why not?
Part of me wants to disagree with you and say, well, they're getting rid of the guys who know the cap and they're getting rid of, all the smart guys. But John, like the point you made, you kind of changed my mind here in just like 1 minute, because it's like, what are you going to say? They won the Supporters' Shield last year, and they ran away with it. They had basically the best season in MLS regular season history. Okay, maybe they're not handling the cap as well as they should, and maybe they moved a player for a little bit different than what they should have, and Armand maybe clutching his pearls a little bit. But what can you say?
I mean, this is like Le GM. You know, like when you talk about LeBron and he's always like making these moves and stuff, people were bitching and moaning about like LeBron doing it, but what happened in the end? They would make, especially when he was at the Cavs, they would make the finals. They'd make consistent appearances. Look, when you have Lionel Messi, you listen to him. Like, plain and simple, that's it. Like, I know, like, we're all agreeing here, which I think is funny because if you go on social media, it's like, Inter Miami's blowing up, they're falling apart. They will be literally fine. They're just putting in their own guys. The Apple News notification was pretty funny, though. It was like they installed their new replacements, like listening to like a government official or something like that. But look, who cares, man? It's literally like LeBron James. It's like Le GM. You put him in there, he's gonna bring in his guys. You know what? You live with the consequences. You live with it. You have to arguably the greatest player of all time making decisions. Who cares? Let him cook. Bring in whoever the hell he wants.
It's like the Jones family talking about how, the Eagles wait until their salary cap hit in like 3 years as they're playing in another Super Bowl. It's like, who
you can't pocket watch the cap. Like, I mean, who cares? They literally have a window of 2 to 3 years with a brand new stadium opening up. Like, they need to have. Like, let Messi cook. Okay, let him be the GM. Let him be the coach. Let him be whatever. They have smart people in the office. They have a cap person. They have these people. They will be literally fine. And people are taking discounts to play with Messi. They'll be fine. Everyone's making a big deal about nothing. I think it's all BS and just people just like to. And maybe I get cold take exposed or whatever it is in a few months, but I see nothing wrong.
That's the thing is the Mascherano. I'm curious about it. I don't know how it's going to work. I don't know if they're going to tactically be good, but that's also a change you can kind of resolve quickly. Technical director, really important position. Obviously, we talk a lot about technical directors who make silly moves or maybe don't understand the league mechanisms like they should or see them in a different way than we do. At the same time, maybe while you can't reverse course as quickly as you can if the manager is bad, I just don't see this tanking Inter Miami right now while they still have Lionel Messi in their employ. And yeah, I think there's going to be some mop-up for Inter Miami after Messi leaves, for MLS after Messi leaves, for Adidas maybe after Messi leak. These are things that you're going to have to figure
Apple.
out. But if you say, hey, you could win a trophy and make lots of money right now, and the cost is these people shifting around to other jobs, right? I think it's one thing too if it's like, oh, this person lost a job or they'll never be the same or they're not getting income. Like, you're listing off people who have been moved to other good positions and I think have a chance to show that they belong in this industry. So to me, look, does it make me think less of Messi? Not really. If he wants to work with his buddies, then I can kind of understand that too. If I get a job in soccer, I'll hire you guys for sure.
Hell yeah! And there's two things that I wanted to talk about with that too. It's like, you know what? You trust Messi where if Mascherano doesn't work, Messi's going to say something and he's going to get him out pretty quickly. And they will have a laundry list of coaches, very well qualified coaches, ready to hop in July at a moment's notice. And you're not sitting here saying, oh, they don't have the roster. If they just need to tweak some tactics, that is something that can be fixed very easily. So we talked on our last show about how LAFC was able to take advantage of the Galaxy's difficult salary cap situation when they signed Marky Delgado. Well, the Galaxy have made their move now, signing Elijah Winder from Louisville City, an MLS to USL money record of $400,000. Winder, who turns 22 in just a month, he's widely regarded as the best young midfielder in the USL. He has over 100 professional games played, over 5,000 minutes played. Armand, why is this move such a big deal? I think there's a lot to this.
Yeah, absolutely. For one, it shows like the value of the USL as a whole. Because look, USL, in my opinion, while it's not necessarily super close to MLS, there's some prospects that, you know, have made the jump to Europe, right? I mean, and some of them have failed in making the jump to Europe. I think we were talking about this in the group chat today. But overall, like the amount of money being spent, $400K on a player from USL, I mean, that's a lot of money, guys. That's like slowly approaching a really good.
I don't see that as very much money.
For the
I see that as
USL,
really cheap.
For the USL,
okay,
for like
for
that
USL
level,
teams,
like,
yes.
Yeah, for like that's huge for them. And also I think for the Galaxy, this is showing that they have to kind of act in unorthodox ways to get this roster going. Because look, I mean, if they split out the way that Winder is going to come in, and this seems like they have to, he's going to be very cheap against the cap. They are figuring out inefficiencies to make this work because, like we kind of spoke about with their roster in the last episode, they're up against it because of the way the whole thing is structured, the overage deal, aka getting kicked off your parents' health insurance. So they're up against it. Will Kuntz is trying to figure out ways to make this work, whether it's U22 players that are low cap hits, whether it's players from the USL, which can be low cap hits using special discovery rules, etc. They're trying to make this work in some way to keep this core together. And I think for the Galaxy, again, finding these inefficiencies is going to be super key for them to keep this roster continuity together. But I mean, for the USL, this is a big step for them. Like, hey, like MLS is noticing us as, hey, let's come pick off players. And I mean, Europe has done that with some of these guys like Kobe Henry. I think Jonathan Gonzalez or Gomez. Excuse me, I got them mixed up. But
both
that's what I think.
No, I think you, first of all, Will Kuntz kind of caught astray from me in the way you edited our short from the last podcast. I was actually making a point that it was like a pretty good thing that he put together a roster that won a title, and now it seems like he's doing something savvy here as well. I think fans in the U.S. have long wondered why we don't see more of these types of moves. There's actually a fair number of players that are kind of going the opposite way, MLS players at the end of their careers, that kind of thing. But to me, that's what the second division is for. You look at a second division in England or Spain, you get that mix of kind of prospects, maybe players loaned from a top division, and these old kind of end of career guys who are still fun to watch, who still have a place in the game and can sort of transition into maybe coaching or other sort of leadership roles that they might be taking on after their career ends. That's why for me, this move is a really bright sign, not necessarily for the Galaxy or Lou City, although I think they're probably winners as well. But for U.S. soccer, when you look at the national team and kind of talk about where do players come from and what have teams outside of CONCACAF had success with, a strong second division is a big indicator of teams that are going to succeed in the future because so many of those players can get that high number of games that you mentioned that Winder has. In Mexico, that doesn't happen. In Costa Rica, that doesn't happen. And in any CONCACAF rival, that doesn't happen. Argentina does. You know, you start to see some of those players in these neighborhood clubs. They move to these bigger clubs in Buenos Aires, and then they go abroad at a very young age. if the US can establish a sort of similar pathway and there are more players worthy of MLS taking a look at them and paying a decent transfer fee for them, whether it's a lot of money or not, I sort of agree with you, Daniel. I think this is a really reasonable fee, but the biggest one in history, then I think it's a really good indication for how soccer could be growing even outside of the big cities in the US. And that's what the US is going to need if they're ever going to compete to win a World Cup in the men's side.
So you're taking a philosophical look at this. I'm taking a look at this as I think it's just a brilliant move from the Galaxy because $400,000 to an MLS team. Okay, how much did Dallas just get paid for Nkosi Tafari, who was arguably their second or third center back? LAFC had to pay almost $400,000 of allocation money, international, spot, etc. for that. Whereas the Galaxy, it's going to be really fascinating to see if Winder can be the starting midfielder that they need him to be. But here's where it's fascinating to me too, Armand. I would kick this back to you is MLS is opening up inter-club moves on money, based total money, not allocation money, just cash. $400,000 is not going to get you that much, I don't think, in the new economy of MLS cash. And this could be seen as a very low-cost, high-impact move. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on if you think that new marketplace is going to make USL players and these transfer fees potentially go up or make scouting USL more important.
So with the like with the MLS like kind of transfer, like the cash for trade, that's what you're talking about, right? Like that whole concept. Yeah. I see that impacting higher end players. I don't see that impacting lower end players. I think allocation money will still be used for that. I think the whole point of the USL, the MLS kind of pipeline is just an inefficiency as a USL just getting better. Like the USL is just getting better as a whole. The league is continuously growing. They're adding. They just announced yesterday that the Garland/Dallas team is building a 10,000 seat stadium with a bunch of fields, their HQ, etc. Like these teams are finally getting stable, and they're actually building proper stadiums. They're actually building the proper infrastructure to produce good talent.
And if they can get the best talent from the Dallas area,
exactly,
there's a lot more than 15 good youth soccer players in the Dallas area.
Exactly. Daniel, you hit the hammer or hit the nail or right on the head. Like that's exactly what it is. You can pull from that pipeline. I butchered that, but whatever. You can pull from the pipeline. There's players that fall through the cracks. How many times in years past have we talked about all these players are falling through the cracks, like MLS teams don't notice them, et cetera, et cetera. Now there's less opportunity for them to fall through those cracks because there's so many teams in the nation and so many higher levels that they can play in.
There's nothing wrong as well if a player has a great youth career, stands out, tries to make a first team in MLS, doesn't do it, and age 20 drops to USL Championship, and maybe by age 23 they're able to get the skills they need to go back. That wasn't exactly the path of like a Diego Luna, but USL was clearly part of his development, a choice that he made consciously. I think he could have signed with an MLS team out of the RSL Arizona setup. Instead, he goes to El Paso. So, Jogo, I think, is another great example. He could have signed with FC Dallas. He goes to Luz City, then jumps to Europe. That diversity of player pathway, I think, is only a positive thing and also helps players sort of be tossed on the scrap heap when they're still having plenty to learn and plenty to give.
Staying on that track of a development pipeline and another record transfer in U.S. soccer, this one to Europe, and this one in the women's game. I really am looking forward to talking about this. So Naomi Girma, 24-year-old center back who has been a two-time NWSL Defender of the Year for San Diego Wave. She was sold to Chelsea for $1.1 reported million, making her the first seven-figure transfer in women's soccer history. And I don't want to get into the soccer side of it right now because San Diego, like, what's going on with them? They traded Jaden Shaw, which I think is a big deal. Obviously, Alex Morgan retired. Now they've transferred arguably their best player. I know they've signed some really, I'll talk about this in a minute, but I know they've signed some really good players from college as the draft has been abolished. I think they've signed kind of what would have been 2 or 3 of the top 5 picks. And I think that's going to be something very fascinating to keep an eye on going forward. But for me, what a watershed moment of an NWSL team selling to a Premier League team. This totally flips what we have seen in the women's club game for basically our entire lives of the United States runs women's club soccer. Is that totally changing now, not only from the sense of just pure talent, but players, we all love San Diego and we'd all love to live in San Diego, but there is absolutely something sexy about I'm going to go play in the Premier League. I'm going to go play for Chelsea. I'm going to be presented in front of 35,000 people in a Premier League game. Am I seeing this as potentially too big of a deal, or is this a huge story?
No, I think it's a big deal, but I think it's easy to sort of run too far in one direction because I think there have been some really good players from the Premier League who are coming to NWSL this offseason as well. Right now, to me, it sort of seems like not the opening salvo because I think there have been other moves, but like the start of an arms race.
Yes.
I really do think that there's going to be some competition in the type of way that in the men's game maybe 10, 15 years ago we saw between teams like Real Madrid and Barcelona and some of the top four at the time for the Premier League, some of the big clubs in Italy. I don't know, Juventus, trash club, and the Bundesliga. No, but I really do think that we're seeing kind of echoes of that. And what it really makes me hope for is a companion Club World Cup and the expansion of the Women's Champions Cup and CONCACAF. I think that could.
The high tide raises all ships, right?
It's tough to build that one because the NWSL was so dominant, even with the Liga MX Femenil teams. The Final Four is going to be interesting here in a couple months in Monterrey. But yeah, I think this move with Girma shows that like a fantastic player going to a top club until there's a tide of multiple players moving one way or the other. I'm not ready to say, I think NWSL fans, I think some are panicking, and I think it's way too early to do that because I see this as players interchanging on all sides.
Well, and I want to say the top two transfers prior to this one were into NWSL this last year with Orlando and the Bay. So yeah, I completely agree that that's too much. But Armand, on the scouting cap transfer side, making money, I want to get your thoughts on. Okay, Girma was a player who was drafted number 1 overall when the draft existed, had a great career. The draft in NWSL is gone. Teams are able to go to any player they want, offer them a contract within the salary cap, and sign them. How big could that be for scouting the college game if you are a team that can now say, hey, the transfer fees are rising here. Even 10% of the highest transfer fee previously was $50,000-$60,000. Now it's $100,000. How long until it's $150,000, $200,000? Do you see that as I see it as a fascinating mechanism in NWSL now that you can go into the college game because MLS can't do that because all of the good players are coming through academies. Obviously, there are, like we talked about earlier, USL players falling through the cracks, but we're talking about the cream of the crop that you can go sign now from the college game and then potentially make money transferring them.
No, you're 100% right. And also, I mean, maybe not as a stiff competition, but our precious Dallas Trinity play in the USL Super League. They can also go compete and sign players out of college.
There are going to be some signings from that league that are going to surprise some people that they thought these players are going NWSL. It's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to happen. There's going to be competition. It's healthy. It's going to grow.
And they are a first division.
And there are technically a first division. Like, regardless, people want to say, it's a second division. They are a U.S. sanctioned first division. And the more these teams get their kind of foot, like I kind of mentioned with the USL, with the men's side USL, the more that these teams actually can establish them. I mean, we're only in their first half season. Like, this has been nothing. This is nothing for them. They're going to face increased competition with NWSL. And sure, I know everyone wants to go to NWSL right now, but who knows what the growth is going to be in 2-3 years? Maybe maybe there's something more going on, etc. But for me, Daniel, the lack of, I guess, of a draft is very interesting because we've never seen it in American sport. In American sport, all we see is draft, and it's kind of like this socialist system to a degree, where it's like the bad teams are going to get good players and kind of bring them back for parity reasons. How's this going to affect parity? If you look at San Diego, right? Hey, we just sold a player for $1 million. Come to us. We'll develop you. We'll let you grow. If you're a college player and you're looking at this, like, would you consider going to another team? Would you consider like, hey, like maybe I'll go check out Bay, maybe I'll go check out etc. Or would you say, hey, I want to go and consolidate go take my talents to a team that is proven to sell players, etc. This makes something kind of interesting, man. I don't know.
A little too far.
I hear you, but the reputation of San Diego is not exactly such that you're like, oh yeah, that's the front office I want to work with. Just saying.
I understand, but also like to a degree, it's also like, hey, like, do we is there a team that's going to stand out and say, hey, we're developing these guys and shipping you off to Europe, and is that going to affect, how players sign in the future?
Will Europe start scouting NCAA? I mean, am I going too far here? Like,
No, absolutely.
They should be.
No, they should be. They should be.
Back to the competition side, MLS this Tuesday afternoon released the qualifications for which teams are playing in which competitions between CONCACAF Champions Cup, which obviously we already knew, Leagues Cup, and the Lamar Hunt US Open Cup. There's going to be 18 teams in Leagues Cup this year, the top 9 teams from each conference in the standings, and then with a few outliers, basically the teams that aren't playing in CONCACAF are also in Open Cup. There's a couple teams that are only doing one. But did they get this right, John? What's kind of your takeaway from all this?
Yeah, I've seen some, I guess, like I would call them tradition extremists saying, no, this isn't good because we need every single MLS team playing their first team in Open Cup. To me, we often complain about schedule congestion. Leagues Cup is going to take up some of that, but like the midweek shift is going to mean that there are less I think there's less blocking, I guess, of the schedule. It's going to be less awkward, more fluid. To me, this is like a pretty good compromise. We even talked about it, I think, in December, where I was talking about in Mexico back in the day. It was top 4 went to CONCACAF Champions Cup, then the next 3 went to Libertadores, and then teams after that would go to certain other competitions. In a way, I think setting it up as a reward is good, and then giving some teams that maybe need a little bit of a boost or just didn't reach their goals the previous year the opportunity to chase something like the U.S. Open Cup is good. Look, like we've talked about this several times. We all love the U.S. Open Cup, but there are things that need to change. And I do wonder if this is a good step in the right direction, getting certain fan bases focused and really in on it because it's the only kind of alternate championship that they can chase, the only cup competition they can chase. To me, this makes a lot of sense. I hear the people that are saying, respect this tradition, etc. I feel like this is a good compromise between what we experienced in 2024 and what maybe the ideal situation might be for people who've been fans of this league for 2 decades.
I think this is creating even more the haves and have-nots of MLS. As I look more into it, we're getting a very I can't think of another term, but just like a caste system of who is who in MLS. Because if you look at it, what really sticks out to me, actually, that I don't think many people are going to notice is these teams actually, a few of them are playing in all 3 competitions. They're just playing their second team in the Open Cup. And that is something that should not be ignored because you are going to have those players playing down. You're allowed to play a few players down in the Open Cup. And you have Miami, Cincinnati, Columbus, LAFC, RSL, and Seattle. Now, most of those you would say are probably the best run teams in MLS. If you were to ask people who are the best run teams in MLS, most people are going to name most of those names. And I just see this as a total, I do think it makes the regular, if they stick to this, which I don't like announcing this after the previous season ends, that, oh, here's the qualifications for Leagues Cup. But if they stick to the top 9 teams from each conference, make the playoffs, and makes Leagues Cup, I think that makes the regular season more important, and I like it.
I personally really like what they did with this because, look, everyone's going to be like, get rid of Leagues Cup. That's the number one thing that everyone kind of talks about, whatever. We're in a reality.
I don't talk about that. I love Leagues Cup.
Well, you're the minority of us.
Believe it or not, I also don't talk about that.
Yeah, exactly. But look, for me, the Leagues Cup is, let's say Leagues Cup is going to exist. It's going to exist for multiple reasons. I enjoy it. It's fun. Whatever. With that assumption already in place, this is a perfect scenario for everybody. You get the Open Cup, you get MLS teams in the Open Cup, and you also get them to prioritize up the stadium. There's part of things is they have to use their primary stadium unless
if you're going to do it right.
Exactly.
I actually don't like that.
Why?
Back in the day, it was really fun if you're an FC Dallas fan to like go to games at SMU. I mean, for me, since I lived closer to the SMU stadium than the
it was not fun.
Stadium,
As someone
Starfire is like a great
it was
venue
not fun
to like see, the Sounders at. There are some teams where it works, and there are probably some teams where it doesn't. Listen, would you rather have a buoyant atmosphere of 8,000 fans at the alternate venue, or would you rather have a tepid atmosphere of those same 8,000 fans at the MLS stadium where it just feels like any other game except.
But then you don't half-ass the marketing.
I saw Romario play at UTD once. That's all I remember.
But John, in my opinion, you don't half-ass the marketing. Then you don't treat it like anything else.
Here's the thing: you can also not half-ass the marketing if it's at another stadium. That's up to you. And I think the thing is that that's up to every team, right? If teams we've said, hey, if teams want to take the Open Cup seriously, which we as lovers of the sport in this country think they should, then they should be able to. I'd say it's the same about marketing, but I don't think the stadium, there's an intimacy level, especially when it's, if you're trying to whole ass market this game and
You're gonna whole ass
man.
market at Westcott or whatever it's called. I mean, it was easier for us. It was easier. Well, I wasn't living in Dallas, but it was easier for you and like whoever lives in Dallas to go to. But I mean, overall, it was just
Or that new
unprofessional.
field,
It sucked.
the new field at Mansfield. I think if if
I
FC
think it
Dallas is
sucked.
building
I think
that,
it sucked, man. You're making that face, but I did
Dude,
not
here's,
enjoy
here's
that.
what I'm saying is that if you're trying to whole ass market something, and Daniel's the actual expert here, if you're whole ass marketing something, you're marketing FC Dallas versus 40FC, let's say, our local team in Dallas that's advanced in the cup for 2 years now. Is it going to be easier to fill Toyota Stadium, FC Dallas versus 40FC on a Wednesday when that Saturday they maybe are playing the LA Galaxy or whoever? Or is it going to be easier to say special one-off event in your community? To me, that's the allure and draw. I do think we're getting into a little bit of like this isn't really the important thing that got announced today, but I do think that that's a little bit of the magic of the cup that we talk about that would have been easy to keep that they removed.
yeah, and I think this is just getting it back to something of what we see like with the FA Cup in Europe, where hey, you're an FC Dallas this year. You're not going to qualify for CONCACAF Champions League. You don't have a good team. This is the one mechanism where you can use to get into this big club competition that you don't really have a chance of getting into otherwise. As we see the levels of MLS split apart, I think it is a positive. Let's dig into the bag, guys. The transfer grab bag. It's still alive. It's still full of stories. And I want to start off first with one that I really want to gauge your temperature on, John, if this is even something that is reality. Alex Zendejas, who is right now the hottest player on Club America. He won the game for them last weekend. He's getting back into the national team picture. There's rumors that he could be reuniting with Oscar Pareja, who was his academy coach, his first coach that signed him in Dallas, that he could be going to Orlando City. They have a bag of money with the Facundo Torres sale. Is there any possible reality to something like this happening? I mean, money talks.
Yeah, exactly. I think America's been open to selling even important players in the past, but they've also been open to fending off offers for key players as well. Fidalgo, the two-way midfielder from Spain, there's been multiple teams that have tried to bring him back to La Liga, and they've said nah, even though they've put a bag in front of him. I think especially right now on the back of back-to-back-to-back championships, America doesn't need to sell. They're not in that mode right now, and they have a team that the manager Jardine, who was rumored to go to Botafogo. I really thought that the move that Zendejas might leave the club if he left. He's given him a ton of confidence. He likes Zendejas. He's one of those players where oh yeah, that's his guy, quote unquote. Even though he's been at the club for longer than the manager has. The fact that he's there, look, anything can happen, and of course, there's the allure I think of just simply making a move and trying to take that next step in the career, trying to get even more in the picture for 2026. But I do wonder with Pochettino showing that he's kind of open to players who are playing in Latin America, if that might not be as much of a consideration. So I would rate it as, anything can happen, but it would be a surprise to me if it gets over the line.
Armand, he would fit though pretty well with Orlando, right? They got Big Dunk up front. They didn't really need Torres. They got Big Dunk and Muriel. Boy, he'd look nice on the wing there.
He would, and it'd be fun. I mean, people are bitching about, oh, he'd be a DP spot or something like that, which he deserves it. He's been incredible in Mexico.
That?
He's been. Don't tell me. I just read stuff, man.
Oh, the guy scoring goals for fun at Club America would be a designated player.
Yeah, I just read stuff, man.
Yeah, think about it. If it was, if it was Henry Martin and he came in on a DP deal, people wouldn't really blink, right? But because it's Zendejas and it's a known quantity, and people didn't like certain things he did with the national team. Oh, he played poorly 2 years ago in some friendly. I do think there's a little bit of sample size. It's the wrong sample size, right?
Well, it's people who don't watch Club America at all either, that are only watching 3 national team games when you're getting 20 minutes. But yeah, Armand, I feel like that could be a great move. What another one that is rumored right now that would potentially make Atlanta a top tier team, Miguel Almiron. I mean, it's being reported as pretty much done right now. How would he transform Atlanta United?
I mean, you add another piece to that puzzle, right? And it looks like
this is a little bit more than another piece.
Yeah, I mean, they're also adding what? That's striker. I can't remember his name because it's not Latte. It's the other guy. No, it's not. It's,
Latte's
it's the other guy. Yeah,
potentially.
Cabral, who I looked at his advanced metrics today, looked fantastic for Benfica. Um, and I mean, overall as a whole, like again, we kind of talked about this last episode. This is a team that's going to have 7 DPs in the field. Like whatever you say, they've been built in a very masterful way to prevent that. Almiron still has stuff in the tank. We've seen that at Newcastle. You're coming from the Premier League to MLS, where we know MLS is not as great defensively, and you're gonna have a lot more open play. He's come to a place where he's very comfortable. I mean, I think it's a slam dunk move, and they know he's a known quantity. It's less of a risk, right? Like what you're gonna get with Miguel Almiron. He's played in Atlanta. It's not gonna take, I would say, as much time to acclimate to the culture, to everything, because he's lived there. That's where he made his
Do you think
name.
he still has a house? Do you think he maybe he's renting and he's
Like an
gonna come knock
Airbnb?
on the door and they're
Yeah.
like, hey, kick the tenant out? They're like, no, come on, man.
Like when I moved back from Italy and there was still someone in my house for another like 4 months, so I had to live at my grandma's old house.
And they were squatting.
And they were
Heartbreaking.
Yes, exactly. No, I can't wait to see what the odds are. I'll put on my Bet MLS hat here for a second. I can't wait to see what the odds are in Atlanta to win MLS Cup, because I'm looking at this team right now and I'm saying if the moves that happen, that are rumored to happen, do happen, this is the best front four in MLS. Finally, we will wrap things up in Liga MX. It is a big midweek match day down in Mexico, and we're through 3 match days with a couple played for some. And the big story, John, that we're looking at is 2 teams that missed the playoffs last year, 2 big teams with respect that missed the playoffs. Pachuca and Leon combined 4-0 to start the season. James Rodriguez scores the winner for Leon, and what a marker for Pachuca. 3-2 game of the weekend, thrilling win in Monterrey. What are you most impressed by right now?
I think how it's coming together for Leon is really impressive. They convinced Andres Guardado not to retire. James Rodriguez is in the mix. They brought in Big Rig, Emilio Viglioni, who didn't do anything at all at Austin FC, but maybe he's one of those players who works in one league and not the other. Look, he didn't have James setting him up at Austin FC, so that could be a difference. You're seeing some younger players as well in the Leon starting lineup, and same for Pachuca. You've got some really standout options. Elias Montiel is someone that everyone's getting really excited about for good reason. I think that in a way these clubs both have returned to their roots, and ahead of the Club World Cup, they needed to get a lot better quickly in the winter. Pachuca really showed well for themselves at that Intercontinental Cup that FIFA had, Armand, where it was like the fake Club World Cup. But this summer, it's going to be a really stiff competition, and the fact that they seem to have invested wisely, made moves that they needed to move, I think will mean that they can not embarrass themselves, Mexico and CONCACAF, at this competition.
John, let me ask you something, because I keep thinking about this. Can both those teams play in the Club World Cup, or are we still not sure what's going to happen? Because I see Alajuelense always like, let us in.
Nah, they're not. I mean, they're not going to get in. But it is a question. I think, when I wrote the newsletter back whenever it was, October, they would release the regulations. It's pretty clear that you're not supposed to do it, but it's also FIFA's competition, and I don't know what they're going to do. The Grupo Pachuca president said they'd be open to selling Leon. But I don't know if that's something you're going to do so quickly to get them in the Club World Cup. I don't know. It seems like the clock, if FIFA is going to have a problem with it, it seems like the clock is really ticking, and no one seems to be moving with that much urgency. So it seems to me like they're both going to participate in the Club World Cup. What that's going to look like, who knows? But also, like, if you bought James Rodriguez to get better for Club World Cup, and then all of a sudden they say, you're not allowed, I'd be pretty frustrated with that too.
And it seems like the star power, though, in the league right now, like the stars are playing, the stars are showing up right now for the good teams, and it's making it an exciting, an exciting product. And I look at like Leon Chivas tonight. I'm going to have that one on.
Oh, for sure. It's been a really interesting start to the league because America sort of did their weird maneuver with the Messi friendly in the preseason, but they're already having a better tournament this year than they did last time around, which they ended up winning. Cruz Azul, a lot of drama there at the bottom. Monterrey hasn't gotten a win yet. Atlas hasn't gotten a win yet. They play on Wednesday, so that's going to be very interesting. A lot of desperation there. Pumas fans are starting to get frustrated with their coaching staff. Scoreless draw against Atlas that they felt like should have been an easy Pumas win. Remember, they had some player movement this offseason. Coco Carrasquilla getting settled there. So it has been a really compelling start beyond just the four Grandes and the two Nuevo Leon teams that spend a lot of money. Necaxa is another team that's like really interesting, and they hired Larcamon, whose name for some reason I just this week have had trouble like starting to pronounce. Really fantastic manager, did well with Leon, did well with Puebla, doing well with Necaxa. They're scoring a lot of goals, so it's fun time to get involved. And of course, the best way to follow it, besides this podcast, is my newsletter, Getting CONCACAF. Check it out.
Check it out. Well, that's a trip around MLS, NWSL, USL, Liga MX. And guys, what is going to be back next week before we record? Which
The Royal Rumble.
The Royal Rumble's next week, and entrant number 30, Cavalry FC, joining the CONCACAF Champions Cup, which starts next Tuesday.
Real hope.
So that's going to be an exciting one. We will have CONCACAF Champions Cup to look at and preview. The season is upon us here in the North American side. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time on The Hex.